Imagine for a second that you are sitting at a mahogany desk,
Yeah.
right? And you're looking at a wire transfer form.
Okay.
You are about to authorize the movement of $152 million.
Just an absolute staggering amount of money.
Right. It's GDP level capital. And you have to ask, what are you buying with that? You aren't buying a skyscraper in Manhattan. You aren't buying, a controlling stake in some tech startup.
Right.
You are buying a piece of dirt surrounded by water in Palm Beach, Florida.
Yeah.
A private island. You are paying $152 million specifically so that no one else on Earth can look at you, bother you, or even stand on the same soil as you.
It is. Yeah, it's a wild amount of money for geographic isolation. And I think it becomes even more fascinating when you zoom out and look at the timing of that kind of transaction.
Right, the economic context.
Exactly, because if you look back to, say, the end of 2022, we were in the middle of this massive global economic storm.
Oh, absolutely.
We had surging inflation, central banks were hiking interest rates at just a dizzying pace, and the result was an estimated $10.1 trillion.
Trillion with a T.
Trillion with a T, yeah. Wiped entirely off global wealth portfolios.
Which is just an incomprehensible evaporation of wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were looking at your own 401k or your personal investments, during that window, you remember the feeling.
Oh, yeah.
It was a sea of red. Everyone was feeling the squeeze.
Yeah.
But then if you peel back a layer, you step slightly to the side, and you realize that there isn't just one economic map of the world.
No, not at all.
There is this parallel geography. Because right in the middle of that $10 trillion bloodbath, an ultra-luxury parallel economy was absolutely booming. People were panic buying isolation.
They were fleeing volatile paper assets, right?
Yep.
And they were targeting these tangible, heavily fortified physical havens.
Yeah.
While traditional portfolios just bled out, indices that were tracking luxury investments were actually jumping double digits. We are talking about a completely insulated reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly what is happening inside that parallel economy.
And we have a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We've got a massive stack of intelligence to get through today. We're looking at global luxury real estate forecasts, wealth reports tracking the ultra-rich, academic papers on how luxury resort ecosystems actually function.
Central bank reports, too.
Right. Central bank reports from island nations and insider dispatches from ultra-luxury hospitality panels. And the overarching narrative that emerges is just wild.
It completely shifts how you view luxury.
It does. The ultra-wealthy are no longer just buying properties. They aren't just buying bigger square footage or, better ocean views. They are buying entire, self-contained, controlled reality environments.
Yes.
But to understand what they're buying, we really have to start by understanding who they are today. Because the face of extreme wealth is fundamentally changing, isn't it?
Radically changing, yeah. The financial industry actually has a term for it right now. They call it the inheritocracy.
The inheritocracy.
Right. What we are watching unfold is literally the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in the history of human economics. Trillions of dollars are moving out of the hands of the baby boomer generation and just cascading down to millennials and Gen Z.
So we're talking about very young people coming into dynasty-level money.
Exactly.
And if you are listening to this and trying to picture a 20-something who just inherited $1 billion, your mind probably goes straight to the stereotypes.
Of course.
You picture fleets of neon supercars, private jets coated in gold, endless champagne at massive public parties. You just assume they want the flashiest toys imaginable.
That is the assumption, right? But the data completely upends it. There is a recent wealth survey tracking over 1,700 wealthy individuals between the ages of 18 and 35.
Okay.
When they were asked to identify the luxury asset they would most like to own, real estate dominated the list at nearly 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. Luxury cars came in second, around 28%. But private jets, which is, the ultimate symbol of high-flying wealth, dropped all the way down to 15%. Art collections and super yachts barely registered by comparison.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
If you are 28 years old and you have basically unlimited funds, why wouldn't you want the jet? I mean, this is a generation that supposedly values travel, mobility, being everywhere at once.
Right.
Why anchor yourself to real estate?
Because the psychology of what actually constitutes luxury has fundamentally shifted. For the previous generations, luxury was defined by this theory from 1899 by a sociologist named Thorstein Veblen.
Veblen, yeah.
He called it conspicuous consumption. The entire point of buying a wildly expensive item was to make sure other people saw you using it. It was literally a billboard for your bank account.
Like wearing a giant diamond necklace to a gala. It doesn't do anything functional, right? It just screams, I have capital.
Exactly. But the academic research we are looking at shows that for the next generation of wealth, material ostentation is viewed as almost gauche.
It's tacky.
Yeah, it's tacky, and
Yeah.
honestly, it is a liability. This post-wealth behavior shift is moving entirely toward the avoidance of public visibility.
Which makes sense today.
It does.
Mhm.
In an era where every single person on the street has a high-definition camera in their pocket, where everyone is trackable via their digital footprint, being seen is easy. Disappearing is hard.
Right.
For the modern, ultra-high net worth individual, or UHNWI, absolute privacy has become the ultimate status symbol.
I love that framing. It's like old wealth was about wearing gold chains to be noticed, but new wealth is about buying an invisibility cloak.
An invisibility cloak, exactly.
You get rich enough, and your primary objective is to ensure nobody can perceive you unless you explicitly allow it.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it, and we can actually quantify that desire for an invisibility cloak. Let's look at the 2025 Global Luxury Real Estate Forecast from Christie's. They aggregated data from their top broker owners and master circle agents across the country. 2/3 of their U.S. affiliates reported that home security is no longer just a checkbox. It is a rapidly growing primary concern for their clients.
Wow.
And we are not talking about installing a standard alarm pad by the front door.
No, I read that section of the Christie's report, and it genuinely felt like reading a spec sheet for a military bunker.
It really does.
We were talking about residential homes being transformed into fortified compounds. They listed AI-enabled surveillance cameras, hidden safe rooms, ballistic-rated doors, biometric entry systems. But the one that really stopped me in my tracks was acoustic sensors.
The acoustic sensors are a fascinating detail.
Let's dwell on that for a second, because if you really think about the mechanics of an acoustic sensor in a home, it is wild.
It's intense.
We are talking about microphones embedded in the perimeter of the property, constantly running algorithms to listen for the specific sonic frequency of breaking glass, or the sound profile of footsteps on gravel outside a window. Think about the psychology of that. You are sitting in your living room, drinking your morning coffee, and your house is actively, aggressively listening for threats.
It reveals a profound undercurrent of paranoia, or perhaps a highly calibrated sense of risk management, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
These buyers are motivated by deep existential concerns over physical crime, digital vulnerabilities, and public exposure. They want to control the physical perimeter of their existence with absolute certainty.
But it's not just about keeping the bad things out, right? There is also this intense focus on keeping the good things in, particularly when it comes to the physical body.
Yes, the wellness aspect.
The wealth data shows that UHNWIs earning over $1 million annually are prioritizing health and wellness experiences above almost anything else. It's a massive focus on longevity.
Because the ultimate constraint on wealth is time.
Exactly.
You can have $1 billion, but you still have the exact same biological expiration date as everyone else unless you can engineer your environment to slow that clock down.
Which is where we see the inside of these fortresses changing. The Christie's report mentions that infrared saunas are becoming the ultimate non-negotiable spa feature for homes in 2025.
Right.
And they highlight this concept of biophilic design. They are building atriums, living walls, massive indoor gardens into the architecture itself.
I want to focus on that biophilic design because it is not just aesthetic, it is functional engineering.
How so?
When we talk about a living wall in an ultra-luxury context, it is not just some ivy growing on a trellis. These are complex hydroponic bioincubators integrated into the home's HVAC system.
Wow.
The plants are actively filtering volatile organic compounds out of the air. They're regulating indoor humidity to perfectly optimize human respiratory function and providing a psychological grounding effect. The home becomes an active participant in extending the owner's lifespan.
So you have this structure. It has ballistic doors to stop bullets, acoustic sensors listening for intruders, infrared saunas to repair your cells, and walls made of living plants to scrub the air you breathe.
It's a closed loop.
It is a perfectly sealed incubator. But here's the problem. Eventually, you have to leave the incubator.
Right.
You step out of your ballistic front door, you pull out of your driveway, and suddenly you are in a crowded city. You are in traffic. Your control ends at your property line.
Which brings us to the ultimate geographical dilemma for the UHNWI. If the goal is a complete invisibility cloak, A fortified mansion in a densely populated area is completely insufficient.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. The only way to expand that perimeter of control is through geographic isolation.
You need an island.
Or at the very least, you need island-level exclusivity. The real estate data tracks this spatial migration perfectly. The ultimate scarcity asset today is isolated real estate.
Right.
We have the Prime International Residential Index, the PIRI 100, which tracks luxury prices globally. Let's look at a 5-year window starting from January 2020. So right before the pandemic completely rewired our relationship with space and privacy.
I have those numbers here, and they are dizzying.
They're huge.
If you invested $1 million in luxury residential property in Miami in January 2020, by 2025, that property was worth $1.9 million.
Almost doubled.
In Dubai, that same million became $2.7 million. Palm Beach saw prices climb by 117.2% over that 5-year period, and Dubai saw a 146.6% increase.
It is the brutal mathematics of land scarcity multiplied by extreme exclusivity.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. Dubai.
Yeah.
I think of Dubai as the global capital of flashy, look-at-me wealth. It's Lamborghini traffic jams and giant skyscrapers. How does a 146% real estate spike in Dubai align with this new desire for total invisibility and privacy? That seems like a massive contradiction.
It is a brilliant question, and the answer lies in the microgeography of Dubai.
Okay.
When we talk about that price spike, we aren't talking about the public-facing, tourist-heavy areas. We are talking about hyper-exclusive gated enclaves like Emirates Hills or the private fronds of the Palm Jumeirah.
I see.
In Dubai, you can buy an entire compound at the end of an artificial peninsula where the security perimeter starts a mile before you even reach the house. It is the illusion of being in a global hub while actually living in a perfectly sealed, highly guarded bubble.
I see. So it's about having access to the global financial infrastructure without having to actually interact with the public infrastructure.
Precisely that. But even those enclaves pale in comparison to the ultimate expression of this trend, the true private island.
Right.
You simply cannot replicate a private island. There is a finite amount of coastal dirt on planet Earth. When someone buys a $152 million island in Palm Beach, they are not buying land. They are buying the absolute right to dictate who gets to exist within a specific geographic radius. Access becomes vastly more valuable than ownership.
And what's really interesting is that the definition of what you actually do with that island is evolving.
It is.
It used to be that you bought an island just to sit on a pristine beach and drink a cocktail while a butler brought you fresh towels. It was purely consumptive. But the insights from the Ultra 2025 panel paint a totally different picture for this next generation of wealth.
What's fascinating here is that the panel spent significant time discussing a property called the Aerial BVI. This is a private island in the British Virgin Islands owned by an entrepreneur named Brittany Turner, and her approach is essentially the blueprint for the next-gen wealth mindset.
Right. She doesn't pitch the island as just a luxury escape. She pitches it as a force for good business.
Exactly.
The entire marketing focus is on personal transformation and global impact.
Let's look at the mechanics of how she actually operates that. The panel report quoted her explaining that guests initially visit for the exceptional isolated experience.
Sure.
But during their stay, they realize that the massive sums of money they are spending are directly funding global initiatives. She channels the resort's revenue into her nonprofit, the Aerial Recovery Group, which actually conducts humanitarian missions and disaster response.
Which is just wild to think about. You are paying tens of thousands of dollars a night to sleep in a luxury villa, and that money's being used to pull people out of rubble in a disaster zone halfway across the world.
Yes.
The island acts as an economic engine for philanthropy.
And think about the psychology of that for the inheritocracy. We talked about how conspicuous consumption carries a stigma now. Extreme wealth can generate profound guilt, especially in a generation hyper-aware of global inequality.
Absolutely.
The Aerial BVI model resolves that psychological tension. It creates a closed-loop system of ethical consumption.
You can indulge in the highest possible level of luxury without the guilt hangover because the environment is mathematically engineered to translate your consumption into positive global impact.
Yeah.
It's a moral invisibility cloak to go with the physical one.
That is a very sharp way to put it. A moral invisibility cloak.
But, okay, let's step out of the psychology for a second and look at the physical reality.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this and you've ever owned a home, you know that things break. Pipes burst, the power goes out, the roof leaks. Owning an island sounds incredibly romantic until the water main breaks. You
Yeah.
can't just call the municipal public works department to come fix it. You're in the middle of the ocean. You have to literally be the city.
The logistical burden of island isolation is immense. And this is exactly why we are seeing a massive evolution in the role of ultra-luxury resort operators.
How so?
They're no longer just hospitality brands that manage reservations and fold towels into swans. They're functioning as micro-sovereign island governments.
Which is a heavy concept.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the academic paper from Zenodo, because they explore this exact phenomenon through the lens of sustainable luxury models.
Yes.
They use the Six Senses Hotel Group as their primary case study, and the lengths this company goes to in order to control their local ecosystem is mind-bending.
The researchers focused on highly remote properties. Six Senses Zai Bay in Oman, Condau in Vietnam, and their resort in Fiji. To operate a 5-star luxury environment in locations that are often ecologically fragile and miles from basic infrastructure, you have to execute total ecosystem and control. We're talking about independently managing logistics chains, localized energy production, staffing entire villages, and handling complete waste management.
Let's use the Fiji property as an example. The academic paper points out that it runs entirely on solar power. But it goes deeper than just slapping some solar panels on the roof. They actually use indigenous building techniques and local materials to naturally control the temperature of the facilities.
Let's break down how that actually works mechanically. When we say the buildings naturally control temperature, we mean they are utilizing thermal mass and passive cooling.
Oh.
Instead of building a sealed glass box and trying to brute force cool it with massive energy-hogging HVAC systems, they design structures with high ceilings, strategic cross-ventilation corridors, and deeply shaded verandas that catch the prevailing ocean trade winds. The materials themselves, local thatch, specific types of stone absorb heat during the day and release it at night. The buildings are literally designed to breathe with the local climate.
Which drastically reduces the energy draw, allowing the solar grid to handle the load. But why go through all that trouble? I mean, for decades, the ultimate flex of luxury was excess.
Oh, totally.
It was blasting the air conditioning so high in a desert resort that you had to wear a sweater inside. It was flying in fresh strawberries from thousands of miles away just for a garnish.
That was the old model. But today, as the Zenodo paper outlines, true luxury requires immaculate ESG credentials, environmental, social, and governance.
Right.
However, the catch is that the UHNWI demographic is highly educated, highly cynical, and deeply afraid of being associated with anything fraudulent. They demand absolute traceability to avoid what the literature calls greenwashing.
Wait, let's define greenwashing for the listener who might not be deep in the corporate sustainability weeds.
Greenwashing is essentially when a company spends more time and money marketing themselves as environmentally friendly than actually minimizing their environmental impact.
Right.
It's putting a little green leaf logo on a plastic bottle and calling it an eco bottle while still polluting the ocean.
Right, it's an empty narrative.
Yeah.
And the academic paper cites a study by Delmas and Bourbano detailing how fraudulent sustainability claims can severely damage a brand. The ultra-wealthy are hypersensitive to this.
Very much so.
If they feel a resort is just using the word sustainable as a gimmick, they feel the symbolic brand-customer contract is broken.
Because, returning to our psychological baseline, their purchase is intimately tied to their identity. They are utilizing these spaces to project a socially legitimate, ethical identity. If the sustainability of the resort is exposed as fake, the guest's identity is compromised. It's a personal affront.
Which explains why Six Senses goes to such granular extremes. The paper details their aggressive circular economy strategies.
The circular economy is fascinating in practice. It means designing out waste entirely.
Let's walk through the literal life cycle of waste there. Say you are at the resort, you order a beautiful fruit platter, and you leave half a melon rind on the plate. In a normal hotel, that goes into a plastic trash bag, gets thrown in a dumpster, and a truck hauls it to a landfill.
But in the micro-sovereign luxury zone, that melon rind is a resource. It goes into a specialized on-site composting facility.
Okay.
It is broken down into nutrient-rich soil over a matter of weeks. That soil is then moved to the resort's massive organic gardens. The soil grows a tomato, and that tomato is served to you in your salad 3 months later.
Wow.
Nothing leaves the perimeter. They have completely eliminated plastic bottles across the entire global chain, bottling their own purified water in reusable glass on site.
And this governance extends beyond just environmental controls. It bleeds into the social fabric. The Zenodo paper highlights how Six Senses Bhutan actively finances and builds sanitation facilities for the surrounding local communities.
Yes.
They aren't just a hotel. They are stepping in to build municipal infrastructure for the entire region they occupy.
This raises an important question, though, about capital. Behind the scenes, the capital allocators are aggressively backing this model. The Knight Frank Wealth Report looks at how family offices, the private advisory firms that manage the day-to-day investments of billionaires, are integrating ESG.
What are they doing?
28% of the family offices surveyed have directly invested in solar power generation. 29% are actively targeting investments in battery storage.
Because they realize that to truly create and sustain these controlled reality environments, you need complete energy independence. You need resilience.
You are dictating the physical, environmental, and social reality of your specific GPS coordinates. You are creating a perfectly sealed, perfectly ethical, perfectly functioning bubble.
But what happens if you are a billionaire who gets restless?
Right.
You have the fortified mansion. You have access to the eco-island. But you don't want to be tied down to one set of GPS coordinates. You want to take the bubble with you.
You buy a super yacht, the ultimate mobile island.
Exactly. Well, wait, I shouldn't say exactly. Let's look at the actual scale of these vessels.
Yeah.
Because the numbers in the Knight Frank report regarding yachts highlight a massive impending logistical nightmare.
They really do.
They reference data from Boat Pro showing that since the early 21st century, 73 yachts measuring over 100 meters have been built. And here is the kicker. Nearly half of those were constructed just in the last 10 years.
We need to contextualize what a 100-meter yacht actually is.
Please do.
That is over 328 feet. It is literally longer than an American football field.
Insane.
It is a floating palace requiring a massive crew, carrying its own submarines, helicopters, and tender boats.
And when you build dozens of floating football fields and hand them over to the world's wealthiest people, you run into a very physical problem. Where do you park them?
Exactly.
The Knight Frank report is remarkably blunt about this. They state that the world's traditional luxury infrastructure is fundamentally failing under the weight of these massive assets.
The physical infrastructure of the Mediterranean simply cannot handle the sheer scale of modern UHNWI mobility.
Let's paint a picture of that failure. The report calls out specific legendary luxury hubs. Saint-Tropez.
Yeah.
The La Mole airfield there has a runway that is simply too short. You cannot land the larger private aircraft needed to fly the owners and their massive entourages in. Venice is actively struggling with congestion and the ecological damage of massive wakes.
Right.
And places like Marbella's Golden Mile in Spain simply lack the deep water berths required to dock a 100-meter yacht.
Imagine the frustration. You have spent $200 million on a mobile island designed to give you absolute freedom and isolation, and you find yourself in a traffic jam outside a Spanish marina, literally unable to dock because your boat draws too much water.
It's the ultimate rich person problem, but it has massive geopolitical and economic ripple effects. Because if they can't park in the Mediterranean, they have to find new oceans.
Which is forcing a rapid pivot to new frontiers. The data notes a massive growing trend toward the Red Sea, leveraging its geographic proximity to the Mediterranean and a deep push into the pristine waters of the Indian Ocean.
And this is where I want to spend some serious time because we have the 2023 annual report from the Central Bank of Seychelles.
Yes.
And this document is a masterclass in how a nation looks at this incoming wave of massive yachts and ultra-wealthy tourists and figures out how to extract maximum economic value without letting the sheer weight of that wealth crush their local ecosystem.
The Seychelles presents a fascinating macroeconomic case study. To set the scene, 2023 was a highly complex year globally. We mentioned the tight monetary conditions and geopolitical tensions.
Right.
Locally, the Seychelles faced severe adversity. In December, they were hit by catastrophic flooding, and simultaneously, a major explosion at a construction aggregate company caused massive, widespread structural damage.
A double disaster scenario.
Precisely. Yet, despite these brutal headwinds, the Seychelles economy remained remarkably resilient. And that stability was fundamentally underpinned by their highly calculated curation of the tourism sector.
The numbers in the central bank report are phenomenal. They welcomed 350,879 visitors in 2023. That is a 5.7% increase from the previous year.
Right.
And those visitors generated a staggering $989 million in earnings. If you break down the math on that, the average expenditure per diem, the amount of money a single tourist spends per day, was hovering around $297.
That per diem number is the crucial metric.
Why is that?
The Seychelles is not trying to be a volume business. They are not trying to pack millions of backpackers onto their beaches. They are deeply committed to a dispersed, high-value, exclusive luxury model. They want fewer people, spending vastly more capital with a much smaller footprint.
And the report details the exact mechanisms they're using to enforce that footprint. In October 2023, they officially launched the Sustainable Seychelles brand. This isn't just a marketing campaign. It's a rigorous framework of guidance and standards for sustainable practices across the entire tourism industry. They are essentially taking the Six Senses micromodel, the compost loops, the energy grids, and applying it at a macro-national level.
But standardizing the hotels is only half the battle. If you have those 100-meter yachts anchored off the coast of Mahe, those floating cities need supplies. They need food.
Right.
And this is where the Seychelles is brilliantly diversifying their domestic ecosystem to support high-end demand locally, drastically reducing the carbon footprint of imported goods.
There is a specific detail in the central bank report that I loved regarding this. It's about a prawn farm.
Oh, yes.
The Island Development Company relaunched a prawn farm on Koh Island. In April 2023, they provided their first batch of white shrimps to the Seychelles Trading Company, and they are projecting an annual yield of 200 tons.
Now, why on earth does a central bank annual report dedicate space to 200 tons of shrimp?
Because it solves the UHNWI traceability problem we talked about earlier. Think about the billionaire on the yacht. They demand premium seafood for their dinner party, but they also demand ESG compliance.
Right, they don't want greenwashing.
Exactly. They don't want shrimp that was flash frozen, put on a cargo ship burning heavy bunker fuel, and transported across 3 oceans. By standing up domestic, highly regulated, sustainable agriculture like the Koh prawn farm, the Seychelles can supply that ultra-luxury demand locally. The carbon footprint of that dinner is virtually zero. It is a vertically integrated luxury supply chain.
And building that kind of domestic infrastructure requires a stable financial bedrock. This is where the macroeconomic policy of the Seychelles becomes the unsung hero of this luxury ecosystem.
How so?
The central bank, under the leadership of Governor Caroline Abel, maintained what they call an accommodative monetary policy rate of 2.0% throughout the entirety of 2023.
Okay, I have to play the role of the non-economist here. I hear accommodative monetary policy rate of 2.0% and my eyes glaze over. How does that abstract banking metric actually help a developer who is trying to build a solar-powered eco-resort?
It's a great question. An accommodative policy essentially means the central bank is keeping the cost of borrowing money relatively low and stable to encourage economic growth.
Okay.
If you are a developer looking to build a $50 million off-grid luxury resort, you need loans to finance the construction. If interest rates are wildly fluctuating or incredibly high, like they were in much of the West in 2023, your financing costs become unpredictable and exorbitant. By holding that rate steady at 2.0%, the Seychelles offer developers a predictable, safe harbor for their capital.
And that makes total sense. It de-risks the massive upfront investment required to build these controlled reality environments. And they actually experience negative inflation too, right?
They did. By December 2023, the year-on-year inflation rate in the Seychelles stood at negative 2.7%. This deflationary trend was driven by a drop in global food and fuel prices, combined with a relatively strong domestic currency. The Seychelles rupee appreciated by 1.8% against the US dollar in annual average terms, trading around 14.01 rupees to the dollar.
So if you are an ultra-wealthy investor looking for a place to park your mobile island, or a developer looking to build a new compound, the Seychelles offers this incredible trifecta.
Yeah.
1, pristine, geographically isolated territory. 2, government-mandated sustainability framework so you don't have to invent the ESG infrastructure from scratch. And 3, a stable, deflationary economic bedrock where your dollar goes further and your borrowing costs are predictable.
It stands in stark contrast to the congestion, failing infrastructure, and high inflation of the traditional European hotspots. The Seychelles has realized that to capture the next-gen UHNWI, you have to offer a carefully curated reality that feels both entirely natural and perfectly managed from a macroeconomic level down to the local shrimp.
Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of all these threads we've been pulling. We've traced the psychology of the inheritocracy and their desperate need for privacy.
Right.
We've looked at the scarcity of island real estate. We've examined how resort operators build self-contained ecosystem grids. And we've seen how entire nations are re-engineering their economies to host these massive floating assets. If you pull all that together, you arrive at the final evolution. Ultra-luxury real estate is no longer just property. It has transcended architecture entirely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the pursuit of absolute frictionless integration. We discussed the biophilic design and infrared saunas from the Christie's report.
Yeah.
That represents the integration of physical health into the environment. The house becomes a machine for living longer. But the psychological integration is where this paradigm shifts into science fiction territory.
And this was the major mind-bending takeaway from the Ultra 2025 panel in Dubai. They hosted this insider event at Atlantis the Royal, which is widely considered one of the most ambitious, hyper-expensive luxury resorts built in the last decade.
Oh, for sure.
And the fascinating thing is that the discussions there barely touched on physical amenities. They weren't bragging about gold leaf ceilings or infinity pools. The conversation was entirely focused on emotional intelligence.
Because physical luxury is assumed at that price point, a comfortable bed and a nice view are baseline expectations. The panel highlighted a stark divergence in the hospitality industry.
What's the divergence?
While mass-market hotels are obsessing over artificial intelligence, trying to replace humans with chatbots, automated check-in kiosks, and algorithmic room service, true ultra-luxury is moving in the exact opposite direction. They are leaning heavily, almost exclusively, into human emotional intelligence.
The numbers on this are staggering. Kim Barter, the general manager at Atlantis the Royal, noted that he oversees a staff comprising 130 different nationalities.
130. Let's really consider the logistical complexity of that.
It is practically the United Nations operating a hotel, and it is completely intentional.
It has to be. When your clientele consists of the global elite, you are dealing with a staggering array of cultural backgrounds. A billionaire guest arriving from Tokyo has fundamentally different cultural expectations regarding respect, unspoken needs, and spatial boundaries than a billionaire guest arriving from Riyadh or a tech founder arriving from Silicon Valley.
I want to dig into that. What does that actually look like in practice?
It means that if a guest from a highly formal culture walks into the lobby, they are greeted by a staff member who innately understands the specific bowing etiquette, the appropriate distance to stand, and the correct level of eye contact.
Wow.
By curating a staff with 130 nationalities, the resort ensures that they possess the inherent, deeply ingrained cultural software to decode any guest on Earth. The goal is to anticipate complex emotional and cultural needs before the guest even has to articulate them.
They called it presenting everything exactly as a guest wants it without them having to ask. The panel moderator, Jenny Southon, noted that by 2030, ultra-luxury will be less about the physical location and entirely about these transformational experiences driven by seamless human connection.
It is the ultimate luxury. The total elimination of all cognitive load. You don't have to think about how to ask for something. You don't have to explain your preferences. Private islands and ultra resorts are the final evolution of luxury real estate because they are not property. They are controlled reality environments.
Right.
The UHNWI is essentially paying hundreds of millions of dollars to buy out the friction of normal human existence.
So what does this all mean for you and me watching this play out? When we look at this entire massive stack of sources, the narrative is incredibly clear.
Very clear.
The next-gen UHNWI is not looking for a vacation. They're not looking to buy a house just to park their money in a nice zip code. They're looking to construct a perfectly tailored, sustainable, intensely secure bubble. They want an environment where the physical weather is optimized by indigenous architectural breathing techniques.
Yes.
They want their food traced back to a localized organic compost loop or a nearby island prawn farm so their consumption feels ethically pure. They want the local community supported by their presence, not exploited by it.
Exactly.
They want physical security that is impenetrable, listening for breaking glass in the dark, but totally invisible to the eye. And above all, they want their emotional needs anticipated by a highly trained, emotionally intelligent staff representing the entire globe. They want to feel deeply, profoundly connected to the best, most polished parts of humanity while remaining completely physically insulated from the messy, unpredictable reality of it.
It is a parallel world engineered to absolute mathematical perfection.
It really is. Well, we have covered a staggering amount of ground today, unpacking the invisible architectures of extreme wealth. From the ballistic doors and acoustic sensors of Palm Beach to the complex deflationary economic stability of the Seychelles. Yeah. From off-grid, solar-powered micro-sovereignties utilizing thermal mass to the staggering emotional intelligence required to manage 130 nationality staff. It is a fascinating, slightly surreal glimpse behind a very, very expensive curtain. Thank you for coming along in this deep dive with us today.
It's been an incredible journey through the data. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a lingering thought to mull over on your own as you go about your day. We've spent an hour exploring the immense capital, the logistical brilliance, and the sheer human effort that goes into curating these flawless, frictionless environments. But if the ultimate expression of luxury is a completely frictionless, perfectly controlled reality, what happens to the joy of serendipity? When you engineer every single variable out of an experience, from the temperature of the air on your skin to the moral purity of your food to the exact emotional resonance of the person handing you a glass of water, do you actually experience the world anymore? Or are you just living inside a beautifully polished, brilliantly engineered mirror reflecting nothing but your own wealth?
That is a deeply unsettling, brilliant question worth thinking about. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you, and thanks for listening.